At the far edge of the world, where the sea turns black and the maps run out, there is a cave. And a man is coming towards it, not by any road, but down through the air, dropping slowly out of the grey sky to land at its mouth. He keeps his eyes low, fixed on the ground at his feet, because he has been warned that to look straight would turn him into stone forever. He is not the first to come here. All around him stand the ones who came before. Strong men turned to stone in mid-step, grey and withered, the terror still frozen on their faces. A silent crowd of statues, standing guard over a cave that no one ever leaves. Inside the cave is the creature the world has named Medusa, a woman's face with living snakes in the place of her hair, with a stare that turns anything alive into cold stone. But this is not where the story begins. It begins somewhere very different, long before the snakes and the cave, when Medusa was a young woman and when the most dangerous thing about her was her beauty. Medusa was mortal. That alone made her strange because she was one of the three sisters, the Gorgons, and the other two were immortal. Her sisters would live forever. Medusa was the only one of the three who could grow old and the only one who could ever die. She was beautiful enough that it became a kind of a fame. People made long journeys just to stand in front of her and look, the way you might travel across a country to see a wonder of the world. And of everything about her, the thing they remembered the most was her hair. And then a god noticed her too. Poseidon, lord of the sea, brother of Zeus, one of the three most powerful beings in all of creation. He saw Medusa and he wanted her. And he was a god, and gods are not in the habit of asking. It happened inside a temple, and not just any temple, the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, one of the most sacred places in the entire world. In the safest, holiest ground she could have stood on, Medusa was attacked by Poseidon. When Athena found her sacred temple defiled, her fury did not fall on Poseidon, it fell on Medusa. Maybe because Poseidon was a god, her equal, and a goddess does not raise her hand against another god. Maybe because it is simply easier to punish the one who cannot fight back. Either way, the most powerful figure left standing looked at a young woman who had just been harmed and decided that she was the problem. Athena took the hair that people had crossed the world to see and turned every strand of it into a living, hissing snake. She twisted Medusa's face into something so terrible that any living thing it landed on would harden instantly into stone. The woman who had done nothing was the one transformed, driven out, and marked as a monster for the rest of time. Poseidon walked away exactly as powerful as before, and the story barely speaks of him again. It was a punishment with no bottom to it. From that day on, Medusa could never look at another living thing and let it live. Not a friend, not her own sisters, not a child, not an animal, not a single face she might have loved could stand before her and survive it. To be close to anyone was to kill them. She was sentenced to be alone for as long as she lived, so she went where she could do no more harm, to that cave at the black edge of the world, far from every road and every home. And still they came, men who had heard there was a monster with a woman's face and serpents for hair, men who wanted the glory of being the one to kill her. They came with their swords and their eyes lowered, and one by one they slipped, or they forgot, or they simply looked, and her gaze caught them. Slowly the cave filled with a crowd of stone men, each frozen in the last second of his courage. Medusa became the monster the world had decided she was. Years later, another young man set out for that same cave. His name was Perseus. Perseus was the son of a mortal woman and of Zeus, the king of the gods. And from the day he was born, the world had tried to get rid of him. A prophecy had named him a danger, so as a newborn, he and his mother were sealed inside a wooden chest and pushed out to the sea to drown. However, they lived. They washed up on a small island and made a home there, until the king of that island decided he wanted Perseus' mother and that the grown son standing in his way had to go. So the king set a trap and he hid it inside a celebration. He announced that he was getting married, and by the custom of the time, every man on the island owed the king a gift for the wedding. The others came forward with fine horses, but Perseus was poor. He had no horse and nothing of worth to put in the king's hands. So instead of a gift, he offered the only thing he had, his service. Whatever the king needed done, he said he would go and do it. That was the answer the king had been waiting for. In front of the whole court, he stood up and he named the one thing he wanted, the head of Medusa. And so Perseus had no choice and he set out to do it, knowing all of it. Knowing the road ended at a cave full of men who had been stronger and braver than he was, standing there now cold as stone. Knowing he might spend the rest of forever as one more statue with his mouth frozen open in fear. Knowing that if he failed, he would never see his mother again. He would not have lasted a day alone, but as son of Zeus, Perseus received vital assistance from the gods to ensure his survival. Hermes, the messenger god, gave him a blade that could cut through anything, and sandals with wings to carry him across the sea. And Athena, the same Athena who had made Medusa a monster, gave him her own shield, polished bright as a mirror, and told him where Medusa slept and exactly how she could be killed. The punishment that began in Athena's temple all those years ago would be finished by Athena's help. Only this time she led a frightened young man to carry the sword. Perseus understood the single rule that killed every man before him: never look at her. So he came into the cave walking backwards, watching her only as a reflection in the mirror-bright shield, moving towards a horror he refused to turn and face. He found her sleeping. Even the snakes were quiet. For a moment there was only this, a frightened young man standing over a sleeping woman, seeing her just as a shape in a mirror. Then he swings. One stroke and it is all over. He never sees her face and she never sees his face. And in the instant she dies, two impossible things rise out of her neck. A warrior gripping a golden sword who strides off into the world, and Pegasus, a great white winged horse who beats up into the air and is gone. Two lives born out of Medusa at the very end. Neither was ever hers to keep. But even death is not the end of what is done to her. Medusa's severed head keeps its power. Anything that meets its stare still turns to stone, which means that even now, even in death, she is far too useful to be left in peace. Perseus carries the head home, and he uses it. He lifts it before the king who sent him to die, and the king and all his court harden into stone where they sit. Perseus rescues his mother and then gives the head to Athena. And Athena takes the face of a woman she cursed and fixes it to the front of her shield and carries it into every battle she will ever fight again. At a glance, here's the story. A mortal woman is wanted by a god, is harmed by him, and then she is punished in his place. She is exiled, hunted, and killed in her sleep. And when there is nothing left of her but her face, that face is bolted onto the armor of the very goddess who started it all, and carried forever as a symbol of power. We were taught to see a monster, snakes for hair, and a killing stare, but every cruel thing in her story was handed down to her by someone more powerful, someone who never paid for any of it. The monster, in the end, was the only one in the whole story who never got to choose a single thing. Subscribe.